And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment of Cowboy State Politics Live. From very high above all the puerile and insipid bombastic twits in the Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Welcome to another week of Cowboy State Politics Live. It is just 1 week before I travel down to the Middle Swamp for the Wyoming legislative session of 2025. You know, and I always get excited every time I go down to the Middle Swamp, just because I know that there's so much that's going to happen that many of you have no idea it is going on. That's one of the reasons why it's absolutely essential that Cowboy State Politics and your illustrious host are down there, so I can tell you exactly what all of these politicians are doing and what they're trying to hide from you. Among the items that they will be debating is Senate File 68, and that's the Governmental Lands Bill. Now, it's interesting, and there's a lot of background behind this, because there are a ton of buildings that the state of Wyoming owns all across the entire state that aren't even being used. There's a ton of land that's owned by the state of Wyoming that is just sitting there vacant. And yet we all pay taxes to support it, especially all of the buildings that are empty. There are a ton of just empty buildings that we pay maintenance on, that we pay utilities on, that nobody uses. Well, there's no reason for government to be in the real estate business. And secondly, government doesn't need to be in the landlord business. But it seems that our state government and municipalities have decided that that is one of their main goals, that they need to own property and they need to lease it out or rent it to whomever wants to use it. The only problem with that is the state of Wyoming hasn't been renting and they haven't been filling those buildings, and yet they remain vacant and we still pay money on them. Well, it seems it just makes sense that if the state isn't using a building, or if government, by and large, doesn't matter if it's your city government or county or the state, if they own a building and they're not doing anything with it, well, then they should just sell it. They should sell it, auction it off, sell it to the highest bidder. The problem with Senate File 68, and I think, let me just look that up real quick while I'm telling you about this, but the problem with the bill is that it doesn't really define what a government purpose is, and it allows the legislators to define that, which a government purpose could be. And the bill is so open. Let me just make sure I've got it right here. Yep. Senate File 68, government-owned lands. And while I've got it up here, let me just read you the title of it. And I quote, "An act relating to taxation, clarifying the taxability of state-owned lands, providing a sunset date, creating a task force to study and provide recommendations related to the taxability of government-owned property, requiring a report specifying applicability, providing appropriations, and providing for an effective date." Okay, sounds great, right? That we shouldn't be taxing buildings that we already own. The problem is that the bill allows the legislature to define what is a governmental purpose. Now, think about it in terms of eminent domain. Now, if there's a planned highway that government's going to build, and it goes right through your property, first of all, government has to pay you a fair price for the use of your property. And let's say it ends up in a protracted legal battle, and you don't want to sell, and you're like the last holdout. Well, the government does have the ability to use eminent domain and to just pay you market rate for the property and to use it for their purposes. Well, this bill allows the legislature to define what a governmental purpose is. And this is a committee bill. It's coming out of revenue. Now, the truth is that it probably doesn't stand a chance in the Wyoming House, or at least the provision that allows them to define what a governmental purpose is doesn't stand a chance. So, I mean, good there. But there's a lot of bills in, and let me just look at the number here real quick while we're talking about this, and I'll just get you a count. Let's see here. There are already on the docket or already in the hopper, there's 120 House bills, and there are little over right around 100 Senate files. But that's not going to be the end of it. In fact, when it's all said and done, we're probably looking at 600 or 700 bills would be my guess. A 2-month legislative session, that's a long time for a lot of laws to come up. So let's say that the legislature defines governmental purpose as any government project, regardless of what court battle needs to happen around eminent domain. Well, that means they could make it easier for the government to take your property and use it for whatever purpose they want it to be. So let me give you an example in Sheridan. The $3 million flower pot. Now, the people on the county commission, they consider that a good use of taxpayer dollars. That is, beautifying the city, which, by the way, is not the proper role of government. That's the role of private institutions and the people that live in the county, not the role of the government. But let's just say that beautification ends up on the list of things that are a governmental purpose. Well, that allows your county commission or your city or the state or however it's defined to decide what is a governmental purpose and what is not. What I'm getting at here is that we have to get away from language such as the department shall promulgate rules, the agency shall determine a process, and that we should have a working group to figure out what the definition of a governmental purpose is. These vague allusions to law allows unelected bureaucrats, people that are not held accountable by you, the Wyoming citizens, to make rules that you have to follow, that nobody got a vote on, that you didn't get a vote on, and if you don't like them, you can't vote these people out of office. Rather, you're just kind of stuck with the rules. This happens a lot. And let me give you an example from the federal government. The ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, they pass all sorts of rules that relate to firearms, none of which go through Congress. Take, for example, the pistol brace rule. Now, a pistol brace is not a piece of it's not a firearm in and of itself. If it's sitting there on the shelf, a pistol brace isn't going to hurt anybody. And the purpose of it is just to stabilize your arm so that you can be more accurate with the firearm. Well, there's this national narrative that these pistol braces are terrible and they're evil and they're going to kill lots of people, which, of course, is absurd. And so the ATF tried to ban them. Same thing with the bump stocks, by the way. That was Trump. I love Trumpy to death, but he sure kind of screwed us over with a bump stock ban. But anyway, all of these rules are passed without going through a legislative body, which means if you don't like them, you can't vote the people that voted for them out of office, and you can't do anything with them because these rules are determined by unelected bureaucrats. In the case of Senate File 68, there's going to be a commission that's put together, a combination of appointees from the House, the Senate, and the governor. So those folks get to decide what this governmental purpose is, which means that it doesn't get debated on the House floor or the Senate floor, and it doesn't go through the governor's office. So Senate File 68, really dangerous bill, and I'll make sure that I keep my eyes on it for you to just so we know exactly what happened. But there's other sorts of dangerous bills that are out there too. The Convention of States, that's a perennial bill that happens every year. I think if you've listened to Cowboy state politics for any length of time, you'll know that I'm adamantly opposed to the Convention of States. We don't have a problem with the Constitution. We have a problem with politicians. And it doesn't matter what changes you make to the Constitution. If the politicians are still there, they're still going to screw us over. There is Senate File 37, the gun control bill from Ed Cooper, to make it so that you have to get yet another permit to carry a concealed weapon in a gun-free zone. Why don't we just get rid of gun-free zones entirely, and we just don't have to worry about any of that? So there's a lot of things in the legislative session that I'm looking forward to reporting on for you, to keep you abreast, keep you in the know, make sure you know where to send the nasty emails when our elected officials screw you over, or at least attempt to screw you over. Let's see here. Before I go any further, a couple of program notes. This afternoon, actually, directly after today's program, I'm going to be interviewing Wyoming Secretary of State Chuck Gray, and I'll publish that interview on the podcast tomorrow. So make sure that you don't miss that. I'm going to ask him about the legislative session and a little situation that's been developing in Teton County that is a direct result of actions of the SLIB board. So I'm going to ask him about that too. And then maybe on Saturday, I've got an alternative view of one of the things that I'm going to ask Chuck Gray about. And I've already got an interview recorded with one of the people who's involved in this little situation in Jackson. So anyway, lots of stuff happening on the program. I'm also working up to an interview with Harriet Hageman, get her take on the upcoming session and what's been happening in the U.S. Congress. Let's see here. But we begin this morning with something that didn't happen yesterday. And I was pleasantly surprised about that. The Democrats did not object to the electoral vote count, which, all right, so you may not think that that's important, and maybe it's not. But for the past, 20, 25 years, the Democrats have objected to every Republican presidential win since I can remember, all the way back to before George Bush. They've objected every time a Republican won, but not yesterday. And I think that's I think it's very telling of where the Democrats are. Donald Trump won the popular vote and he won the electoral vote. So really, there's not a whole lot to object to. They know that all of their court cases are going down the crapper. Oh, by the way, did you hear that Judge Merchan, the leftist activist judge, is going to sentence Donald Trump on the 10th of January, 10 days before his inauguration? So let's see here. Today's Tuesday, so that'll happen on, Friday. Anyway, the Democrats have made a career out of objecting to the election. Now, I put together a montage just to prove to you how invested the Democrats are in their own political power. So the original montage I put together was about 10 minutes long. I went a little crazy when I was assembling it. You know, what I do is I just go through and find all the sound bites that I'm looking for, and I just add them together. That's what happened with the Biden gaffe reel. And you know, as you probably remember, I was unable, I haven't played the entire Biden gaffe reel just because it's so darn long. Well, the same kind of holds true for this Democrat denial thing. So I've selected a small portion of it. Here is Democrats objecting to pretty much every election in the past 20 to 25 years. And you'll pay attention because there's people in the media and members of Congress from each successive election objecting to it. So here's some Democrat denial for you.
You can run the best campaign, you can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you.
Yeah, no kidding.
How can you win with Russian interference, though?
That's a real
what I'm
thing.
scared about in 2020.
But rightly.
Because I think he's an illegitimate president that didn't really win. So how do you fight against that in 2020?
You are absolutely right.
He's an illegitimate president in my mind.
Would you be my vice presidential candidate? Folks, look, I absolutely agree.
Trump didn't actually win the election in 2016. He lost the election, and he was put into office because the Russians interfered.
Trump knows he's an illegitimate president.
The president-elect, although legally elected, is not legitimate.
I don't see this president-elect
as a legitimate president.
Where you and others participated in what I call the United States coup d'etat.
There's no doubt in my mind that Al Gore was elected president.
I rise to object to the fraudulent 25 Florida electoral votes.
I must object because of the overwhelming evidence of official misconduct, deliberate fraud, and an attempt to suppress voter turnout.
It is signed by myself on behalf of my diverse constituents and the millions of Americans who have been disenfranchised by Florida's inaccurate vote count.
The Supreme Court, not the people of the United States, decided this election.
And malfunctioning electronic machines, which may not have paper receipts, have led to additional loss of confidence by the public.
The right to vote has been stolen from qualified voters.
In 2004, the democratic process was thwarted.
The 2004 presidential election in Ohio was riddled with unnecessary problems.
Some machines malfunction, causing votes to be counted more than once, or not at all.
Based upon an inordinate number of
allegations
suggesting...
You get the point. Now, the most fascinating part of that montage is the Democrats objecting to use of machines for voting. Did you catch that part? That at one point, the machines are terrible. They're switching votes. They're causing our Democrat to lose the election. But now, if you even suggest that the machines are creating some sort of problem then you are an absolute radical. And it's amazing. Even in Wyoming, there have been so many people that have rebuffed claims that the machines are, inaccurate and that we need to do a hand count, up until what happened in Weston County. And if you listen to the podcast, I did a couple of episodes on how the Weston County clerk, through partial negligence and it was partially intentional, created a situation where the vote counting machines didn't count votes. So all of that is actually something that happens, and it's absolutely fascinating. The Democrats in Congress, a long time ago, the machines, we can't use these voting machines. They're terrible. They switch votes, and they don't count votes, and that's how Republicans cheat. But now, now we have to use these voting machines. It's absolutely insane. Well, when we come back, I think we need to take a trip down memory lane about Joe Biden. The guy's always been a massive jerk. And since he's going out of office, we should just recount all the times that he was an absolute 100% piece of crap. Coming up after the break. Christmas is over, and all of the fun holiday cheer has been had. And what are we all left with? Frigid Wyoming weather. Below freezing temperatures that you still have to go out in. That's right, you do have to go back to work at one point or another. And not to scare you, but think about this. Every single morning, you get to scrape the ice off of your windshield. Now, while I can't do anything with that, I can make sure that your feet stay nice and toasty warm while you're doing it. All you have to do is order a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. And to get you a pair of them, go to the website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Wyoming is one of the most sought-after places to live. There's a lot of people that want to move to our great state. And if you're thinking about selling your house to one of them, you need a real estate agent that you can trust. That agent is Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She's lived in Jackson for almost 20 years and has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market. Last year, she sold almost $25 million worth of property. So if you're thinking of buying or selling, give Rebecca a call. Her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm
Watch out. Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. The program is only going to continue to expand from every county in this state to every state in this country. It's Cowboy State Politics. Now, when presidents leave office, we saw a lot of this with Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter passed away recently, if you're unaware. And there was this fawning over him. Oh, Jimmy Carter was such a nice guy. Jimmy Carter did so many great things. Except, of course, that Jimmy Carter wrote a book on how the Israelis are engaged in apartheid. By that whole narrative pretty much started with Jimmy Carter. What a heck of a nice guy. But the truth is, Jimmy Carter was a terrible president. Awful, even. And it took Ronald Reagan to right the country. But, he passed away, and, it's you don't like to talk bad about the dead, but the truth is, the guy was a terrible president. Should have never been in office. Would have been great if he would have just continued his philanthropic efforts after his presidency. Pretty good guy, except for that whole calling Israel an apartheid state. The same is sort of happening with Joe Biden. There's this media narrative that, Joe Biden is the most decent guy. He's such a good person. Well, the truth is that Joe Biden has always been a jerk. You could pick of him from any number of instances where he was an absolute and complete, jerk. From the confirmation hearing of Clarence Thomas, where he just tried to destroy that guy's record. What about the guy that was in the accident with Joe Biden's first wife? The truth is, that was just an accident, and there wasn't any alcohol involved, but Joe Biden for years repeated the narrative that the guy was drunk. He pretty much destroyed that guy's entire life. But Joe Biden is such a nice guy. From the Federalist, and I quote, "If the last 4 years have proven anything, it's that Biden is a nasty, mean old man whose temper often gets the best of him. Joe Biden, especially since becoming president, has benefited from corporate media portraying him as the unifier, civil, and even a decent man. But he's not. When the going gets mildly tough, Biden flies off the handle." Let me give you an example of his most recent one. He was talking to reporters, and he, first of all, and this soundbite doesn't include him going after Trump, but here's what he said to a bunch of reporters who were asking him about the incoming administration. Listen to this.
My being the oldest president, I know more world leaders than any one of you ever met in your whole goddamn life.
Oh, well, that's awfully decent of him, insulting people that are just trying to, ask him a question. But it's far from the first time that Biden has lashed out at Democrat propagandists and cheerleaders that make up the corporate media. Mere months into his White House tenure, Biden had snapped at reporters nearly a dozen times. The Democrat tried to cover up one particular outburst aimed at the press corps by calling them, quote, "some of the brightest people in the country," after asking them, "Why the hell? What do you all want to do with your time?" Less than a year later, Biden called Fox News' Peter Doocy a stupid son of a bee for asking him about eye-popping inflation. Here's that soundbite.
Why are you saying anybody want to turn these price up? What do you think President on inflation that? Do you think inflation is political liability?
That's a great asset. More inflation. What a stupid son of a bitch.
Of course, he was pointing that one towards Fox News' Peter Doocy for just asking him a question. It was on Biden's first presidential campaign trail in 1988 that he told one voter who asked him about his educational background that, quote, "I think I probably have a much higher IQ than you do, I suspect." And let's see here. Here's that soundbite.
What law school did you attend, and where did you place in that class? And the other question is, could you quickly, I think I
probably have a much higher IQ than you do, I suspect. I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship.
All of that is not
true. The first year in law school, I decided I didn't want to be in law school and ended up in the bottom two-thirds of my class, and then decided I wanted to stay, went back to law school, and in fact ended up in the top half of my class.
That's not true. true.
I won the international moot court competition. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school and 165 credits, only need 123 credits, and I'd be delighted to sit down and compare my IQ to yours if you'd like, Frank.
So he can't resist insulting people. Here's another one. Let's see here. This was on the campaign trail recently where he called a constituent who was just asking him a question a damn liar. Here you go.
But you, on the other hand, sent your son over there to get a job and work for a gas company that he had no experience with gas or nothing, in order to get access to the public, for the president. So you're selling access to the president just like he does. So you're
a damn liar, man. That's not true. And no one has ever said that. No one has heard that.
Yeah, except that it's all true, and we all found that out after the Hunter Biden laptop, and everything about Joe Biden became public. The truth is that Joe Biden is just a jerk. Additionally, Biden tried multiple times to ruin the reputation of innocent men, including Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas and Ronald Reagan nominee Robert Bork. A lot of people, if you're in political circles, you remember the whole Robert Bork incident where Joe Biden was just I don't even know how you want to put this, just untethered from reality and just literally made it his mission to destroy Robert Bork. In fact, in political circles, getting borked, that's a common phrase. A politician just tries to illegitimately destroy your character. And here's another one. Biden lost this is the one I was referring to earlier. Biden lost his first wife and 13-month-old daughter in a car accident that also injured his 2 sons in 1972. The chief prosecutor who oversaw the investigation into the crash explicitly stated that alcohol was not a factor. Yet Biden repeatedly claimed in speeches and on the campaign trail that the driver of the truck, Curtis Dunn, was drunk. That pretty much went a long way to destroying Curtis Dunn's reputation. The Democrats' distortion of events surrounding the incident caused Dunn, who initially swerved to avoid the collision and then rendered aid afterwards, immense emotional pain. Dunn's daughter said Biden's lies specifically haunted and tormented him for years. When he's not lying about his long history of plagiarism, which he does almost all the time, fake grades, non-existent scholarships, and an inflated class rank, Biden has shafted his granddaughter, enabled his son's bad behavior, and is pretending that he is the smartest man in the room. Personal life aside, Biden was just an aggressive, selfish, and vulgar in his role as president. When hundreds of people were affected by the deadly Maui fires, Biden was on the Delaware beach where he offered reporters, quote, no comment on the tragedy before jetting off to another vacation. When the Taliban took over in Afghanistan in 2021, Biden hid out at Camp David. Later, at a transfer ceremony for the 13 U.S. service members who lost their lives, one of whom was from Jackson, thanks to his administration's hasty withdrawal, Biden appeared to check his timepiece, and he falsely told the Gold Star families of those service members that, quote, his son Beau died in Iraq. It's not true at all. In his own suckers and losers scandal, Biden also insulted Bronze Star veterans and downplayed the military deaths that happened under his watch. The truth is that Biden has never been a decent person, nor a cordial president. He also inflicted record-breaking inflation on Americans and then lied about it. He took a wrecking ball to the Constitution and free speech. While claiming to be a devout Catholic, Biden openly called for the murder of unborn babies. He spent years promoting the sexualization and mutilation of healthy children, even pardoned a pedophile. Actions speak louder than words, and if we are to judge a president by his actions, as we all should, Biden is a 100% unadulterated jerk, and the history books will treat him as such. Well, let's see here. We're down at the bottom of the hour, so let's go ahead and take another break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the top 10 lies of Liz Cheney and the January 6th Commission. There's a whole bunch of them, and we only have time for 10, but we'll cover those next. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics live every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. on the Independence Network. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Cowboy State Politics is sponsored by FreedomGoldUSA.com. They are the working man's gold company. The economy is in turmoil. The stock market pretty much is out of control, and you never know what's going to happen with your finances or your income. One way that you can shore up everything is by investing in gold and silver. Go to freedomgoldusa.com/David for a free interview to discuss your options and find out if gold or silver is right for you. One more time, that's freedomgoldusa.com/David. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network, on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, just about anywhere. And as it relates to that, don't ever forget about the Cowboy State Politics Podcast, Wyoming's most listened to political program. You can catch the new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. And while we're at it, you should just subscribe and follow the program. And that way you can be notified each and every time there's a brand new episode of Cowboy State Politics. You can do that from my website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. Now, yesterday was January 6th, and I was absolutely shocked that nothing happened. No, it's not true at all. I didn't think anything was going to happen at all. The Democrats really don't have any reason. Well, they probably have lots of reasons, but they don't have any room. They don't have any ground to object to anything that happened in the last election because they got beat so handily. So, as it is January 7th, I thought we ought to take a look back and look at our dearly departed representative. And I don't mean dearly departed as, in the common sense, common use of the term. What I mean is we got rid of Liz Cheney, and we should just look at the top 10 reasons why we did it. And let's go back on that. One of the reasons why, and the main reason why the Wyoming Republican Party chose not to recognize Liz Cheney as our elected Republican representative is that she didn't talk to us. Yes, it had a lot to do with January 6th. I mean, that was the impetus behind it. But really, Liz Cheney went something like, 300 and some odd days before she ever talked to Wyoming Republicans. From before January 6th, Liz Cheney had gone a really long time without holding a forum or contacting the leadership of the Wyoming Republican Party. And so we went through a process and we pretty much got rid of her. But most of it had to do with her not being in contact with Wyoming Republicans. Well, on January 6th, in fact, 7 minutes into the riot, Liz Cheney was blaming Donald Trump without being in possession of any of the facts, anything. She was on Twitter. It was then still called Twitter. Claiming that Donald Trump was responsible for the Capitol riot. But here is the first lie from January 6th and Liz Cheney, that January 6th was an insurrection. It was not. And if it was the most poorly funded, poorly planned, poorly armed, poorly executed insurrection in the history of the world. Yeah. Was it a riot? Yes, it was. There was a lot of damage that happened at the U.S. Capitol. But was it an insurrection? Was it a group of people that were trying to take power in the United States? Absolutely not. It wasn't. But the January 6th panel and beyond deployed the term insurrection to characterize 2 hours of violence at the Capitol like they collectively developed Tourette's syndrome and as a nasty side effect of the Trump derangement syndrome. The number 2 lie of Liz Cheney that democracy almost died. This one is preposterous. In her post-congressional memoir published in 2023, Cheney solemnly wrote, quote, "We almost lost our republic that day," referencing the demonstrations on January 6th of 2021. At a public hearing in 2022, Chairman Thompson similarly said, quote, "Our system nearly failed and our democratic foundation was almost destroyed." Except such hyperbolic claims never really had any merit. Lawmakers were promptly escorted to secure locations after security at the Capitol was compromised, and Congress was able to reconvene just hours later. Clearly not an insurrection. Excuse me. There we go. Number 3, Trump incited the insurrection. Now, this was probably one of the most repeated headlines, repeated falsehoods, repeated claims that was just absolutely not true. Trump didn't incite the insurrection. Well, first of all, there wasn't an insurrection to begin with. But he wasn't the incitement. Now, you've heard about this claim over and over and over. The media repeated it pretty much everywhere. But here is what President Trump said during his rally before the January 6th event. Listen to this.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Today we will see whether Republicans stand strong for integrity of our elections, but whether or not they stand strong for our country.
Aha! It's peacefully and patriotically. Now, that piece there is something that the mainstream media, and specifically the January 6th committee, never repeated. They never played that soundbite at their hearing because they wanted all of you to believe that Trump incited the insurrection that wasn't. Number 4, Trump was enthusiastic about the violence. This is a big one here. President Trump, the January 6th committee said, was not just apathetic about the violence, but was enthusiastic, according to testimony from the panel's star witness, former White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson. Trump, Hutchinson said in her testimony, approved of demonstrators who were demanding to, quote, hang Mike Pence. But House investigators who reviewed the January 6th committee's charges found that there was, quote, no evidence that President Trump agreed with rioters chanting, hang Mike Pence. Number 5. Trump tried to hijack a limousine to riot at the Capitol himself. This one was probably one of the biggest lies that came out of Cassidy Hutchinson's mouth. There's absolutely no proof of this. The folks that were in the car contradicted what Hutchinson had said. Number 6, Trump dismissed the need for the National Guard. In her memoir, Cheney characterized Trump as negligent in his role to deploy the National Guard ahead of the election. Quote, to be clear, the issue was not that the Secret Service failed to brief those up the chain of the White House upon threat. Cheney wrote, it appeared to this committee that this information was being conveyed up the chain, including directly to Mark Meadows and President Trump. The truth is that President Trump absolutely authorized the use of National Guard forces on January 6th, but it was Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C. that said no, they didn't need them. So that one directly on their shoulders. Number 7, demonstrations were mostly violent. Hundreds of hours of video surveillance prove that this claim is absolutely not true. Former Fox News host Tucker Carlson flipped the January 6th narrative of an excessively violent demonstration on its head when he aired additional footage from the Capitol released to his team by then House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Quote, these are the pictures you've seen of January 6th, Carlson said on his now defunct primetime program. But it turns out there's quite a bit of video that you haven't seen, and that video tells a very different story about what happened on January 6th. Number 8, a Capitol police officer was killed in a riot. That is absolutely categorically not true. The New York Times quietly corrected a story blaming Capitol rioters for the death of deceased officer Brian Sicknick, but members of the January 6th committee never have. In fact, during a hearing months after a report from the D.C. Medical Examiner's Office concluded that Officer Sicknick died of natural causes, then Representative Elaine Loria claimed, quote, that he succumbed to his injuries from the riot the night of January 7th. The only 2 people to die directly from the riot were female Trump supporters Ashley Babbitt, who was shot by a Capitol police officer, and Roseanne Boyland, who was trampled. Those are the only two people that died during January 6th. Ashley Babbitt was the only person killed directly in the riot by a Capitol police officer. And to my knowledge, that Capitol police officer has not been held accountable. In fact, he went on to write a book, went on multiple media appearances, and the thing has been 100% debunked, which is probably why you haven't heard about it. Number 9, Loudermilk gave rioters reconnaissance tours. There's no evidence of this. And number 10, the January 6th committee was legitimate. Then Speaker Nancy Pelosi violated House rules when she banned minority representation on her select committee to investigate January 6th. The unprecedented move to bar Republican lawmakers from the committee meant that Cheney had misled witnesses and federal agencies about the panel's legitimate bipartisanship. Because House rules dictate that ranking committee members must be appointed by the minority party, Cheney, who was appointed by the Democrat speaker, served as the panel's vice chair. So there you have it. The top 10 lies of the January 6th committee. That there was even a dangerous riot. Let's see here. Well, we've got a few minutes to do this one here. So the Biden administration is wrapping everything up pretty soon. Donald Trump is going to take power, and all of these morons are going to be out on their ear. One of who is trying to go out like a lion, is Merrick Garland. And here's a piece from, I believe this is from the Federalist. Merrick Garland uses cops who died by a stroke and suicides to rewrite January 6th history. Now, he gave a speech. Let's see here. I believe it was, it was yesterday. Quote, "Not a single Capitol police officer was killed on January 6th, yet Attorney General Merrick Garland's dishonest statement about the protest released Monday may have people thinking otherwise. Here is liar Merrick Garland's statement, and I quote, "On this day, 4 years ago, police officers were brutally assaulted while bravely defending the United States Capitol. They were punched, tackled, tased, and attacked with chemical agents that burned their eyes and skin," Garland said. "Today, I'm thinking of the officers who still bear the scars of that day, as well as the loved ones of the 5 officers who lost their lives in the line of duty as a result of what happened to them on January 6th. But not a single officer was killed by any January 6th defendant, which is perhaps why not a single defendant was charged with manslaughter or murder." And we just went over how Brian Sicknick died of natural causes. But in fact, the Washington Post has reported that authorities drew no connection between the riot and another person, Hashida's death. That's one of the other people that died. Not during the riot, but afterwards. Quote, "An official familiar with the investigation said Hashida had struggles beyond January 6th that could have played a role," the report continued. Chief of the Metropolitan Police Department, Robert Conti, said that he could not say whether or the riot was the cause of suicides, according to the New York Times. So Hashida killed himself after the riot. So Merrick Garland is claiming that officers were killed during the riot. That's not true. The only person that was killed, that was shot, was Ashley Babbitt, and then there was one other person that was trampled, according to Merrick Garland. But the truth is that it is only Ashley Babbitt. Only Ashley Babbitt. And we need to hold that officer responsible. Let's go ahead and take our third break. And when we come back, there's an interesting piece from Reason.com. It's that Biden is going out the way he started, trying to ban oil production. Good luck on that, Joe. Donald Trump's coming. Drill, baby, drill. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network. You're not going to find a better source of news, information, and entertainment than right here on the Independence Network. Now, we're making a few changes, moving a couple things around, out with the old and in with the new, and that whole spiel. Of course, you could listen to my program, The Ramble Room with Ken Pendergraft, Locked and Loaded with the good Representative Tony Locke from Casper, There's a whole bunch more coming on the Independence Network. Also, don't forget to check out the articles section at the website, independencenetwork.us. It's loaded with op-eds, commentary, and news from all around the Cowboy State. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics, live on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, on Twitter. I'm everywhere. Welcome back to the program, my friends. I'm David Iverson, your illustrious host, documented to be almost always right 98.9% of the time. I just really need to go rework those numbers. I mean, it's getting a little wordy. But the truth is that Cowboy State Politics is way more accurate than anybody in the Wyoming media. And I mean, it's the reason for it is pretty simple. I just do my own research and I check my facts and I don't jump to conclusions. And I'm actually pretty fair about it, even though if you ask the Redcoats, they'll say that he's terrible. He's not unfair. Well, the reason why they don't want to come on this program is because they will be held accountable. And, anybody is welcome to come on here. I would love to have Mike Yen on the program. In fact, every time I go down to the session, I try really hard to get him to come on to the show just to talk about the Democrat agenda, maybe debate a little bit, or anybody else. I'd love to have Landon Brown on or any of them. But anyway, welcome back to the program. And as I mentioned before the break, Biden is trying to go out exactly like he came in, which is trying to halt oil production from Reason.com. And I quote, "With 2 weeks left in office, President Joe Biden is ending his presidency the same way he started it, halting oil production. On Monday, he announced a ban on offshore oil and natural gas drilling in more than 625 million acres of federal waters, roughly as large as the land area of Alaska, Texas, and Montana combined. The order will not impact federal offshore drilling in most of the Gulf of Mexico," which, by the way, I was just watching Fox News in the studio, and there's a headline that says, "Trump says that the Gulf of Mexico is going to be renamed the Gulf of America." Why not make America great again, my friends? MAGA. Anyway, Biden, using his statutory authority under the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act, Biden has permanently halted oil and gas development along the entire U.S. East Coast, the eastern Gulf of Mexico, and Florida's coast. Let's see here. And in a statement, Biden said, "In balancing the many uses and benefits of America's oceans, it is clear to me that the relatively minimal fossil fuel potential in these areas," which, by the way, it's gigantic. It's not minimal at all. Now, President-elect Donald Trump, who halted new oil and gas leasing off the coast of South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida through 2032, hold on a minute, during his first term in office, has vowed to repeal the Biden ban on day one. Since the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act gives presidents considerable leeway to ban drilling, but not to reverse said bans. Overturning the order will likely require federal legislation. I mean, it's Joe Biden trying to thwart every single thing they possibly can of the Trump administration. And right after the election, it was the Democrats, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris saying, "We are going to make this as smooth as possible, the peaceful transition of power." But none of that is really true. They're Democrats, and you never really believe what comes out of their mouth. In fact, Trump is accusing the Biden administration of making the transition as difficult as possible. This was published yesterday, and I quote, President-elect Donald Trump accused retiring President Biden on Monday of making his return to high office as difficult as possible. Quote, Biden is doing everything possible to make the transition as difficult. From lawfare, such as never been seen before, to costly and ridiculous executive orders on the Green News scam and other money-wasting hoaxes. Fear not, these orders will be terminated shortly, and we will become a nation of common sense and strength. MAGA. Trump issued the statement shortly before Congress certified his victory in the Electoral College, which, by the way, not a single Democrat objected to. Still kind of amazed by that. The legislative formality took place 4 years after a mob of then-President Trump supporters stormed the Capitol. Biden's aides, blah, 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 spent the final week scrambling to prevent Trump from clawing back funds that were approved by Congress over the past 4 years. And Republicans said the spending fueled inflation. Those bills included $1.9 trillion for COVID-19, $1.2 trillion for the infrastructure law, $280 billion for the CHIPS and Science Act, plus the $437 billion Inflation Reduction Act, which included an estimated $369 billion in environmental grants and subsidies. Quote, Biden is doing everything possible to make the transition as difficult as possible. Trump made the statement, let's see here. White House officials told the Washington Post in November that 98% of the funds from those 4 bills had been committed through fiscal year 2024 and that Biden's team was working to dispense the remainder. Of course they are. They're trying to make the transition as difficult as possible because they know after Trump is in the White House, there is no way that the Democrats are going to be able to move forward with their plans. It's just not going to happen. Pretty much every executive order that Joe Biden signed is going to be reversed, I would hope, on day one, which I can't wait to see a picture of the Resolute desk piled high with all of the orders rescinding everything that Joe Biden did to try to destroy this country. And that's another problem, that the Democrats knew that they couldn't get anything through Congress. So they just tried to rule by executive order. And to be fair, both Democrats and Republicans have tried to do this. There were a lot of executive orders that have come out of just about every administration. So anyway, let's move on to a funny one. Well, I don't know if it's really funny, but did you hear that Justin Trudeau decided to resign? Well, not exactly. I want you to listen to what he actually said. Let's see if I've got that soundbite. Hold on just a second. I'll find it. But he issued a statement, and he said, sometime in March, I'm going to resign. Let's see if I've got this. Yeah, here we go. Listen to his statement.
Last night over dinner, I told my kids about the decision that I'm sharing with you today. I intend to resign as party leader, as prime minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process.
Okay, all right. So did you hear what he said? I intend to resign after the party selects a new leader. So he's going to stay in power to make sure that his progressive party, or whatever the heck that they call it up there in Canada, the 51st state, Governor Trudeau said that he'll resign after the party that is in power selects a new leader. And at some point in the future, he'll resign. Now, this is also interesting because Justin Trudeau prorogued Parliament. Now, that's a term for suspending Parliament. So not that long ago, Trudeau pretty much said, yeah, Parliament, you're absolutely suspended, which means that no legislation, no debate, no nothing could happen in the Canadian Parliament. And now, because they're suspended, Justin Trudeau is saying, well, we're going to hold an election and then I'll resign after the election, which is in essence saying, if I don't like the results of the election, well, then I'm not going to resign. It's a bunch of hogwash. It's what dictator progressives always do, and Justin Trudeau is on the top of the list. Well, we've come to the end of another busy broadcast hour on the program. Have a good Monday or Tuesday, and we'll talk again tomorrow. Pay attention to the podcast. Chuck Gray's coming tomorrow. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson.